Hello, and welcome back to the Striha Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Parker Striha, and on today's episode, we are going to be discussing some huge news that just came out of the NFC North. I'm by no means professional, but I do love talking about sports, so thank you for joining me. It was reported this morning by, I believe, Pat McAfee, of all people, that legendary quarterback Aaron Rodgers will be returning to the Green Bay Packers. It was reported that he was seriously considering retiring or going to the Denver Broncos, but ultimately did decide to come back to Green Bay. It was also, news also came out this morning when the news broke of him coming back, that they then signed him to a 4-year, $200 million extension, which would make him the highest paid player in NFL history with $50 million per year. But then Rodgers did come out on his Twitter and say, although the reports are true that he is coming back to Green Bay, so he did confirm that, but he did say that the reports about him signing a contract or how big the contract is, he said all of that was false. So really all we know right now is that Rodgers is coming back to Green Bay, which is huge for the Green Bay Packers organization and fans of the Green Bay Packers, but it is also not great for the other teams in the NFC North. They were preparing for Rodgers to leave, so they had a chance to win, and now he's staying for who knows how long, so they're going to have to wait until he's gone for the real chance at winning the division. But yeah, so I'm assuming he will sign a contract extension at some point in the near future. I don't know how big it's going to be. I think he's going to end up signing one that's a little bit more team-friendly. So he won't have a huge cap hit, but I'm sure he'll still get his money because he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, in my opinion. And I think he's also arguably the greatest quarterback in Green Bay Packer history. But shortly after the news broke of him signing an extension that, like I said, have been called false by Aaron Rodgers, it was reported that Davante Adams is getting the franchise tag, which will be roughly $20 million guaranteed, I believe, which is a lot of money. And I think Green Bay has until about June to give him an extension before he has to play the year on the franchise tag. So if I'm Green Bay, I need to get this extension done quick, bring his cap hit down, and if they do that, it'll dramatically help the team, I believe. Because if you're putting that much money towards one player or two players when you look at Rodgers and Adams, that can be really detrimental to a team as a whole if you have hopes of winning a Super Bowl. And with those two coming back, I don't see any reason why Green Bay wouldn't be considered a favorite to win the Super Bowl or to at least come out of the NFC, especially with Tom Brady retiring. I don't really trust any team in the NFC now other than maybe the Rams. I think when Robert Woods and Odell Beckham Jr. come back healthy, which probably would be close to about the time the playoffs are going to start, I think they could be really scary, but I don't know what that offense is going to do for most of the season. Granted, they still have Cooper Kupp, who put up the greatest receiving season of all time this year. So, I mean, he can get work done on his own, but who is going to be that second guy that steps up for them? I don't think it's going to be Van Jefferson, but it might be. It might be Tyler Higbee. You just never know. It could be Tutu Atwell, but I highly doubt that. Cowboys, they're going to be scary again. I don't know what they'll do in the playoffs, but I think they'll be good. They have arguably one of the most talented rosters in the league as a whole, so I think they should be considered a favorite to win the NFC, but I think they're in that conversation every year, and it never really works out for them. Same with Green Bay, though, so not a lot can be said about both of those. Arizona, they're going through some troubles this offseason with Kyler Murray, so who knows what's going to happen with them. And I don't know, it's going to be weird. I don't really think there's going to be a lot of teams in the NFC that are going to be in contention to come out, except for maybe Dallas, LA, and Green Bay. But with Aaron Rodgers coming back, Green Bay I think they just solidified themselves a playoff berth. I mean, they're pretty much guaranteed a playoff berth because they're in the NFC North, but that it is what it is. That's a point that can be argued by other people who aren't Green Bay Packer fans or who don't like them or however you want to put that. But with Aaron Rodgers coming back, now comes the conversation about Jordan Love. What is Green Bay going to do with the former 26th overall pick from 2020? In the 2 years since he's been drafted, I think he doesn't have 50 completions. He doesn't have over 500 passing yards. Hasn't really played a lot. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I read some reports earlier that, I don't know who talked to who, but some league executive said they believe that Green Bay could get as high as a second-round pick for him. And I think if you're committing to Aaron Rodgers until he retires and you want to trade Jordan Love, do it. Get what you can for him now while he's still young, because if you keep wasting that and getting him till the end of his rookie contract, you risk there's the chance of losing him for absolutely nothing. And I think if they're getting offered a second-round pick by a team like Washington or Carolina or even like New York Giants are another team, or Pittsburgh, I think if you're getting offered as high as a second-round pick and maybe an extra pick or however that trade would work out, I think you have to take it. Kurt Benkert, I think, he's a decent backup for Green Bay, and I think he can do as much as Jordan Love could for Green Bay. He's obviously not the athlete that Jordan Love is, but Jordan Love's athleticism does no good for Green Bay Packers or him if he's never on the field, or if he never sees the field, that is. So, I mean, I think if they can trade him, do it, get what value you can, because that draft pick, if it's this year especially, why not go out and try to get a player that could help push for a Super Bowl this year? And I think that's going to be a big story coming and going throughout this offseason with free agency starting next week and the new league year starting next week. It'll be really interesting to see what Green Bay does. I'm curious to see what the contract is actually going to be with Aaron Rodgers, because I'm sure he's going to get a contract extension to stay there. But you don't really know what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm not a part of the organization, so I'm not like in the circle. But it'll be interesting. I think he's going to get paid a pretty hefty amount. I don't think obviously it won't be the $50 million a year that was reported earlier, just because Aaron Rodgers shut that down really quick. I think it's going to be interesting for Green Bay's quarterback room with Rodgers coming back and Jordan Love possibly getting traded. I think he should get traded, but that remains to be seen. But if he does end up getting traded, I think that will go down in history as a really bad draft pick for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, there are other first-round picks that year that were a lot worse than him. Guys like Damon Arnett, Isaiah Wilson, Jeff Gladney. None of them are even on a team right now. So, I mean, they have that going for them, that their first-round pick is at least on their team still and isn't like facing jail or prison for doing stupid stuff. But this offseason is going to be really interesting. I think Green Bay has a lot of questions to answer, but I also think that with Rodgers coming back, their biggest question just got answered. So the money situation still needs to get figured out, because they're going to be really, really tight for money just based on contracts that are currently on the books for them. There are reports that they're going to end up releasing Zadarius Smith, which is really sad, because I think he's one of the best players on that Green Bay team overall. So losing him would be massive for that defense. And I think the way it looks right now is they're going to completely rebuild their pass rush with Rashawn Gary on one side and someone else on the other, because there's also talks, and it's pretty likely that Preston Smith is going to get released or traded too. So, like I said, Green Bay has a lot of questions to answer this offseason, and once free agency starts, I guess a lot of them will hopefully be answered. I don't know if they'll be able to bring back guys like Shannon Sullivan or Devondre Campbell, but I think, just because I think those guys are going to get probably overpaid simply because of how they performed for Green Bay this year. But I think they'll probably be able to bring back guys like Robert Tonyan or Alan Lazard or even Marquez Valdez-Scantling, just because Rodgers likes those guys, and I don't know how big the market's going to be for all of them. I think Rodgers has made all three of them look really good. So they might be overvalued, but then again, because they're not huge receivers, like big name receivers, there might not be a huge market for them. So I can see Green Bay putting a tender on them or offering them a contract that's team friendly and will make them want to come back, because Green Bay's really going to push for a Super Bowl this year, and those guys are going to want to keep playing with Aaron Rodgers. And with Tunyon, he tore his ACL, so I don't know how big, and he's still in rehab for that ACL, so I don't know how big the market's going to be for him. I think he's the most likely to come back to Green Bay on a really cheap deal, because then he can stay in Green Bay, he can rehab, and then hopefully come back right in time for a playoff push. But I guess a lot will unfold in the coming weeks leading up to the draft and the weeks after that, going into training camp and stuff like that. But Green Bay is going to be a pretty big topic for discussion throughout the next couple weeks, couple months. And I will try my best to stay on top of that because, I mean, like I said, Aaron Rodgers, arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Devontae Adams, arguably the greatest receiver in the league right now. So it's a pretty fun topic to discuss by myself, I guess. But only time will tell. I'm looking forward to whatever new news will come out of Green Bay and really any other team in the league. But for now, I'm your host, Parker Striha, and this has been the Striha Sports Podcast. Our random sport fact of the day is that legendary San Francisco 49er quarterback Steve Young is the only left-handed quarterback in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. As always, thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for whenever a new video gets posted.